Hello YouTube, my name is Rick, and today I'm working on a 2.7 liter Porsche Boxster engine, 2002 model, that I'm swapping in to a 99 Boxster that originally came with a 2.5 liter. Now, since the engine's going to be out of the vehicle, I'm going to do a few upgrades while I have the opportunity and while it's much less labor to get some things done. This is the engine we'll be working on today. Today I hope to be showing you how to replace the rear IMS bearing, which there are tons of videos out there that you can watch to see how that's done. A little bit different in that this one's out of the vehicle, and we'll be doing a couple other things, discussing some of the items that have to be swapped over, what you use off the 2.7, what you use off the 2.5 in order to make this swap work. So hopefully it'll be interesting. Hopefully somebody will get something out of it. Hopefully it'll be successful. Let's get started with seeing what Pelican Parts sent me today. I'm gonna try to put you up in the holder here. All right. First of all, box number one. We have water pump. Now, what I understand, these aren't too difficult to do once they're with the engine in the vehicle. Comes with the gasket, which was something that I had a question on, and I think we did spend a little extra and get the one with the brass impeller. You can see right there. Some of these, you can get them cheaper. They come with a plastic impeller. I'm just not crazy about the idea of the plastic impeller. That probably won't be on today's video. Let's see what else we have in here. All right. Bag of something. Ah, yes. Cam seals. 4 of them there. Should be all that I ordered. Those are necessary for replacing. See them here and here on this bank, and corresponding on the back bank on the other side, to lock the camshafts in place when you're trying to remove the IMS bearing, because you're going to be taking the tensioners out. So I also bought 3 tensioner seals. We'll replace those because I imagine those are crushed one-time use, as well as some O-rings and looks like a water outlet gasket. Don't know what side that goes on, but we'll take a look. As well as one of the first things, excuse me a minute, that I found when I was putting this wiring harness together. Basically, the general idea behind it is you're going to be using the engine, the 2.7, but you're going to be installing a 2.5 liter wiring harness on it. And I never did get a definite answer from anybody on any of the forums. It appears that it's best to use the injectors also out of the 2.5, just because that's the computer we'll be using, that's the wiring harness we'll be using. It's pretty much guaranteed to work that way. The injectors do appear to be different, where the 2002 was a returnless fuel system. No specs really exist on the 2.5 injectors that I was able to find, so just went the route of safety there. One of the differences very minor difference is the water temperature sensor, sending unit sensor, whatever you want to call it. On the 99, they have this square 4-pin, and on the 2002, I'll show you when we get to it, but it's a flat 4-pin, so it does not plug in over here. I know it's great camera work, but bear with me. Thought it would be better if the camera were just held steady. Anyhow, that's what's behind door number 1. We have another box, also from Pelican. Seemed to be a pretty good source for Boxster parts. Never had heard of them before I bought first Boxster about a year ago. And on the drive home, the tensioner pulley came apart. With these cars, a lot of times it's not just a matter of calling up your local AutoZone or Advance Auto and getting a replacement. It's much more complicated than that, and as most of you know, it's also a lot more expensive than that. This box we have thermostat. Perfect. I do believe I went with a lower thermostat temperature on this. I'll have to double check to confirm that. Again, I bought it for a 2002. There's no wiring, no temperature sensors on it or anything, so that also should be a pretty straightforward replacement. Back in the box. A couple wire loom connectors that broke. Swapping the harnesses over, not a real big deal. This is the air oil separator, goes on the back of the engine. Much easier to do this with the vehicle, with the engine out of the vehicle than with it in the vehicle. Also probably something that's best suited for another video. And then we have the infamous rear main seal. That will also be perhaps another video, as I have to fabricate the tool necessary to install the rear main seal, which brings me to a good topic of conversation. These engines, these cars in general, can be very expensive to own, to operate. I know some guys take them to the track. That's got to be exponentially expensive to do. But just the regular maintenance items on them, some of the things that you would expect are not very expensive, can almost be cost prohibitive. They're not for the faint of heart. You definitely want to have a little bit of funds set back if you decide to own one of these to take care of the things that will come up on a regular basis. Problem is, to properly work on these vehicles requires, in a lot of cases, special tools that can be in the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to purchase. And because they're so expensive, you just can't find somebody that's getting out of his Boxster or her Boxster and wanting to sell the tools that they've invested in. It's just not an easy thing to find. So you're left with two options. Either you spend the money and outfit your toolbox with a bunch of Porsche tools that you'll need maybe once every 30,000 miles. I know a company by the name of LN Engineering will loan you the tools if you're buying their product, which is a very good deal for some. For my situation, I wasn't going to go with the high-end IMS bearing because this is just a hobby. It's not something that you know, I need to make the best of the best. As good as it was new is certainly fine with me. So that's why I chose the IMS bearing from Pelican Parts, which they bill as a direct, good as factory replacement for the IMS, where apparently you reuse the cover and you have a single row bearing with seals on both sides. We will compare new to old once we get the old one out. This particular kit does come with the set screws in order to hold it in place, but I also decided that for my purposes, probably should open this before I started rolling camera. For my purposes, would fabricate the tools that are necessary to hold the camshafts in place, hold the crankshaft in place, kind of hold all 5 of those chains where they need to be, release the tension on them. Then you can extract the bearing from the rear of the engine, and then subsequently install the new IMS bearing. So since that is the project of the day, we'll get started with that. First thing you're going to want to do, make sure I got you on a good angle here. First thing you're going to want to do is turn your crankshaft pulley, this pulley right here, to top dead center. Now you have a couple holes in it for installing a special tool. This one I did buy. They were only, I think, $34 to get this one and the one for the automatic transmission to hold the torque converter in, which I thought was a reasonable price to pay. I know you can use just a drill bit that's the same size as this, but I opted for getting the tool. Anyhow, you'll see 3 round holes here. Those are for corresponding to the torque converter bolts on the automatic transmission. You would turn it around. I know this one's locked in position because I just pulled it out. Lock it here so you have the ability to hold the crankshaft still while you're extracting the 2 6mm inverse X nuts, I think they are. Pull this out, rotate it another 120 degrees. You'd pin it when this hole is up here, pin it again, take out the 2 nuts, 1 more rotation, pin it, take out the last 2, and then you could just leave this in here. But if you're doing anything with the timing, you want the timing to be at top dead center, which is the teardrop hole right here. So the guide that it fits into is in about the 11 o'clock position, maybe 11:15. So we're going to have to rotate this crankshaft around almost a full turn in order to get it held into place for the first step. So a 24mm socket, want to rotate clockwise, just very little pressure, rotate it around. Now, I don't have the spark plugs in this, so it's a lot easier to do with spark plugs out of it. All right, so we're right there. That should do it. Okay, now we got it locked at top dead center. Won't turn either way. I won't show you the other way because I'll probably end up breaking that bolt loose. So now you have your crankshaft locked into position. The timing chain that runs from here over to this head won't be able to move. You do have camshaft plug over here, but that one remains in. You do have a tensioner up top, which I do think we will be taking out. There are 3 tensioners we'll remove during the process. But the next step is going to be to remove these 2 cylinder head plugs that cover the back of the camshaft. And to do that, I need to get a pick. Bear with me a minute while I go do that. Also, I mentioned in passing about fabricating the camshaft holders. There's a gentleman that had a blog. I haven't seen anything from him in quite some time, entitled Burner's Cars. If you find him online and find his blog, I believe it's still up, you will be able to get the exact dimensions that these are supposed to be cut to. Now mine were a little bit different. I'm going to see if they work. If they don't work, I'm just going to pause the video and go over to the grinder and the welder and make them to spec. They're pretty close. They're within a millimeter. And the idea is simply just to hold the camshaft still. You've got the crankshaft held still. You're going to hold it still back there. Take the tensions off of them so that the intermediate shaft can remain still while you're extracting the rear IMS bearing. Now, as far as doing an IMS bearing, this would be the second one that I've done. The first one was just an experimental one done on a workbench on the old 2.5 that's coming out of this vehicle. So I just had a free-floating IMS. I didn't have to do any of the hold downs for any of the camshafts or anything like that. So where this isn't necessarily the most challenging way to do this, that is reserved for doing them in the car. This certainly isn't a walk in the park either. So say to get a hooked pick. I've seen videos where there are guys that said that was very difficult. I don't know if I just chose the right tool or I got very lucky, but that seemed to come out with relative ease. Let's pry it out. One thing you're going to want to notice, if you look in here, you see these 2 notches. Those should be perfectly up and down, in line with the cylinder head cover. That way the locking tool will fit into the slot, lock down, and not allow the camshaft to move, even though the chain is on the other side. This will hold this camshaft, and since this has a chain running from here to here up on the front of the cylinder head, rear of the engine, but the front of this cylinder head, it will not allow either camshaft to move. And again, like we mentioned, we have the crankshaft held into place with the pin. So let's see if these are going to go in and work the way that I had hoped they would, or if we're going to have to pause and get back to this in a little bit. So basically this goes in, and Also, I didn't need to use bolts that were 2.5 inches long, but I had a fresh pack of 8mm bolts sitting on the workbench, so I figured start with good threads. I don't want to get anything cross-threaded into the side of this cylinder head. I've heard that you can use the bolts out of the flywheel. Flywheel's in a box up on the shelf right now, so this was a much easier path than getting those down and making sure they work. A little bit, a lot longer than they need to be, but after I get this tightened down, I'll discuss some of the differences between what the specs were on these hold down plates and what I made them. Okay, there. So basically, they wanted you to build a plate that was 4mm thick. Here in the States, if anybody's actually watching this internationally, you don't buy steel that way. It comes in fractional, and I believe this is 5/16. It was 3 inches wide. The spec on it was to be like 37mm, I think. All the specs that he gave were in millimeters. So this was the closest I had. And with buying this piece, I could cut it straight down the middle and get 2 pieces for every run that I had, and then just cut them, use the first one as a template, and make the second one. Seems to be just fine. Certainly not going to have any movement. It was supposed to be 4mm thick. This is 3 plus a little bit thick. Get your calculators out and do the math conversion yourself. But I don't think that that it's going to make a difference. And for readily available stock that you can go down to Lowe's or any farm and fleet and buy a piece of metal for $8. Cheapest I found these hold downs online, where there was a fellow selling them for I think $150, and he was international, which is just crazy money to spend on something that's just a slab of metal. Now I may come back and decide that was could be one of the dumbest statements I've ever uttered, because if that camshaft moves and this comes out of time, well, then we're going to have a lot more videos and a lot more content, but not necessarily video and content that I would like to do. But for now, that seems to have it held into place. So just to review, we've got the crankshaft held into place. We've got the camshafts on this cylinder head locked down in place. We got to pick up and go to the other side of the engine and lock down the camshafts from the other cylinder head. So after a brief pause, we will be right back.